installing a new boiler in a cylinder cupboard. My name's Alan Hart, and in today's video I'm going to show you how or what you need to do when you're going to install a new boiler into an airing cupboard or a cylinder cupboard. So if you're going to take the old cylinder out, I'll show you what pipes you need to cut and what you need to consider when you're going to install a boiler into an airing cupboard. Also, we're going to put a combi boiler in the airing cupboard. So again, I'll show you what I believe you need to consider when you're going to install a combi boiler into an airing cupboard. I'm also going to try and answer some of the questions. One of the questions being asked already is from Ian, and he's put pumps and PRV discharge. So if you're going to use a condensate pump, what type of condensate pump would you use? So I'm going to try and cover all that in this video and more, show you how to cut all tanks out, etc. So yeah, let's have a look. So first thing I want to point out is I am not a trainer. I'm just trying my best to pass some knowledge on to new people into the industry, trainees, and also people that's been doing it a few years, but they might have only done breakdowns, or they might have only done meter installs. I've done this job for over 30 years, and I started on this old stuff, so that's what I'm used to. So yeah, what I've got here, got a little diagram. It's not correct, but it's just to try and give you an idea of what we're going to try and do in this video. So we're going to remove this cylinder, but we need to make sure we keep the correct pipes here, so that we've got the pipes for when we put the new combi boiler into this airing cupboard. So if we start at the bottom here, how we're working here. So that the old boiler, normally it might be a heat only boiler downstairs in the utility room or in the kitchen. It'll have a little small gas pipe usually, and it'll be a 15mm gas pipe. So that's one thing that we're going to have to get up to this airing cupboard. We would normally have to update that pipe to minimum, and I say minimum, 22mm. It will depend on the boiler, depend on the output, but as I say, minimum 22mm normally. And then what we've got to do, we've got to remove these tanks. We've also got to check for things like showers and baths. Are the tank fed? Will the showers work off mains pressure? So that's just things to take into consideration when you're going to quote to put a new combi boiler in. A few things to remember, or what I like to remember, is OCP. When we have a look here, we've got your open vent, we've got your cold feed, and we've got your pump, and normally that's within 150mm. So that's just something for you to check as well. We've also got the diverter valve that I've put there. And if we have a look on this here, so that's your OCP, open vent cold feed pump. But if we have a look at the diverter valve here, cylinder, so B for bath, and then rads, A for air, that's how I remember it. So you've got your main flow from your boiler there, AB, goes into the valve. This valve decides which way it's going to send it. B goes to your bath, so B goes to your hot water cylinder, and A goes to your radiators. If we just have a quick look at a hot water cylinder or hot water tank, if we have a look in the airing cupboard here, you can see pipes going down, and this valve here, this gate valve, if you was just going to replace the cylinder and you needed to drain the cylinder down, then this is the valve that you may turn off, unless you decided to turn it off at the cold mains and empty the tank as well. But this would be the valve. Normally this is the gate valve you would turn off if you was replacing the cylinder. But on this occasion, this video is about taking the cylinder out, so all this pipework here would just be removed. So when we go up into the loft, we've got two tanks on this job. The one on the left is the bigger tank, so that's the cold water storage tank, and that feeds the hot water cylinder. But also that could also feed say for instance if the bath was tank fed or there was a tank fed shower, it could also feed the cold water to them. So you could sometimes have quite a few pipes coming off this bigger tank. And then if we have a look on the right hand side, the small tank here, this tank feeds the central heating. So you can see there it's very, very mucky on this one, but this one feeds the central heating. Another thing to consider is if we're putting a combi boiler in, is what is the flow rate. So sometimes the tank fed could be higher than what you've got mains pressure. So that's something that could catch you out. So always check the flow rate on the cold water and the cold mains. Another thing we need to consider is if we're going to put a combi boiler in, can we get a condensate pipe out and also the blow off if it needs a blow off. Some boilers don't need a blow off, but I'll go into that in a bit more detail later on. Also, if you're going to bring the condensate pipe outside, how are you going to protect it? Does it need to be insulated? Does it need to be lagged? And that's another thing to consider. And also, are you using the correct lagging? So are you using a waterproof lagging? So that's just a few of the things that you've got to consider. And one thing I wanted to point out as well is terminology of different components in a system. So I would always call this a hot water cylinder, and I'd always call this a tank. And different people call them different things. But when I went to college, that's how we were taught. It's a long time ago. Things change and people like to change how they decide things. And nowadays this is called a hot water storage vessel, I think. And this is a cistern, I think they call it nowadays. But yeah, as I said, different terminology. If you haven't done so already, please give us a thumbs up and also add a comment below. If you can't think of a comment, just put boiler or something like that. Now we're going to have a look at how we would drain this down, what pipes we need to cut out, etc. One thing to point out with this cylinder would normally have a coil in here. I have done another video which is called how does a hot water cylinder work. So if you just search on YouTube and you can find that video, and that shows you a cut out section of a cylinder and it shows you how this works. So I think that's a really interesting video if you're training. So first of all, what we're going to do here, we would turn the mains off, the cold water mains, because we're going to take these tanks out. For the purposes of this video, I haven't put the cold mains pipe in, just because it'll be a little bit confusing here. There'll be too many pipes. But we would have on here, we'd have a cold pipe, and then this would come down from here through the airing cupboard, and what we'd normally do is cut it down in airing cupboard, but we'll add that pipe back in after, once we've deleted some of this out of the way, if that makes sense. So what we've done, we've gone downstairs under the kitchen sink or wherever, we've turned cold water mains off, and then what we need to do, we need to drain the heating. So this small tank is going to drain the heat inside, and we would also open the hot tap. Opening the hot tap will drain this tank up here, and what it'll do is, that valve that I showed you earlier on the cylinder, this would be this valve here. So as I say, if you was just going to change a cylinder, you may use that gate valve, turn that gate valve off, open your hot tap, cut this pipe here and change your cylinder. But obviously for this one, we're going to remove the cylinder. So we've gone downstairs, we've turned the mains off, the cold mains, we've opened the hot and cold taps, get as much water out as we can. And then what we need to do then, if you can, is find a drain off for the central heating. So if there's a radiator that's got a drain off on, start to drain the heating down. And what that will do, that will drain this tank down here. So then you'll be draining the water out of here. And then once you've drained that out of there, you can start cutting some of this out, this here. So we can cut all this out. Just to bear in mind, we're going to need some of these pipes again. So you just need to make sure that you've marked the pipes so you know which pipes are which. And on this, the pipes we're going to need is this one here. Because that one there goes to the central heating. So that's the pipe that we need. The one that comes up from the boiler, normally you just disconnect it. So if you see there, it only goes back to the boiler. And it may be on the top of the boiler as well. You've also got a drain off, and you might want to open that as well, just to get some pipe, some water out of this section of the pipe work. Not all central heating systems or systems with cylinders are piped the same. So this is just to give you an idea of what it could be piped like. So I'm not telling you that this is what it will be like on your system. This is just to give you an idea of what the pipes may be on your system. And now what we're going to do, we've started to drain this tank down. So we've drained the water off. We've got the water out. We've opened the hot tap. The hot tap has now removed the water out of this tank. And it'll take it down to about here. And that's about the maximum it's going to drain it to. To there. And we're still going to have water in this hot water cylinder. I did do a video on how to drain a hot water cylinder. I'll just show you a little clip of that now. I'll give you a little bit of a laugh. So as I said, I did a full video on this, and it was how to drain a cylinder hot water tank leads plumber. So if you wanted to search for that, you can search for that. But what you're doing, all you're doing is you're siphoning the water out of the cylinder. I will also show you another way that you can do it in a minute, but this just shows you, if you're putting your hose pipe into the top of the cylinder, into the hot water cylinder, and then all you're going to do then is you take your hose obviously to the outside, and then you would suck on that hose and you're siphoning the water out of the system. And if you just see, I'm just going to show you, just going to suck it out of this. This is just Vimto, but I'll just suck it out of here and suck it into this other tube. So it's really easy, really easy to do once you know what you're doing and you don't spill it. I didn't have some fun doing that video. I got Vimto everywhere. Another way to drain a cylinder, sometimes you'll have a drain off. So sometimes you'll have a drain off like this on the bottom of the cylinder, might be there. So you might be able to drain it off through the drain off. That's another way you can do it. The way that I would normally do it on this pipe here, and I've said this before in other videos, but I'd have a push fit connection, which is 22mm to 15, normally a speed fit connection. And one side of it would connect to hose pipe, so I'd have a little bit of 15mm copper into your hose pipe, into the speed fit reducer, and then just push that on there. And I'd slacken this nut off slightly at bottom, and then I'd fold this pipe down if there's nothing in front of it here. So you cannot always do this, but if you can, it just lets full flow out and it empties it right down to the bottom of the cylinder as well, which is, I like it this way. Obviously here you'd have to make sure that you were careful and you didn't spill any water, put some towels there, and once you've got this folded down, you can also nip that nut back up a little bit if you did do it that way. And then the other way of doing it is like what we've already said, is siphon it out. So you can use, if you siphon it out, what you're going to do, you're going to disconnect that off there, your top of your cylinder. You will get a little bit of water that'll come out here when you do that. So you might just want to have some towels or some blue roll or something around there. And then what you need to do then, you need to put something down in this hot water cylinder. So it may be you can put a bit of speed fit or a bit of copper pipe. And then what you need to do is this bottom bit here, you don't want it to be totally touching bottom. So sometimes you can put a little bend on a bit of 15mm copper pipe. And then this comes out the top here. And then you have your hose pipe on here. and then you're siphoning it like I've shown you on that video. I hope that makes sense. But what you're doing, this volume of water here, you need to get this volume of water out of the hot water cylinder. And then once you've done that, you can then take this out. So we've now got it empty. We'll remove this cylinder. So now we've got his return there. So that would have been the return from the cylinder and also the return from the central heating. And a lot of the time, this will just be under the floorboards and there'll be a T. And normally, or a lot of the time, that pipe, this pipe here, the return, it'll go back to the boiler like that. So then what we do then, we need to connect onto the rest of the heating system. So we need to connect onto some of these pipes here. We also need to connect onto this the hot tap bit as well. The T here that would be on the return, it should be the last T, but it's not always piped like that. So you just need to be very careful. Sometimes you might have to cap off down here, near boiler, or just above boiler, just depends. Obviously you want to cut this back, as far as you possibly can. Ideally, if that is the last T, you want to just cut it here and then just get rid of all this. So now we've done a tightness test on the gas. We've done our electrical checks to the TB118 safety bulletin. So if you haven't seen, I've done a video on that as well. I've also got a really interesting video coming soon. I've got a really good trainer. He's actually been a trainer for over 20 years and he's an amazing guy. And I've got him, he's going to go through some electrical, what tools you need to do this job. Also how to test gas valves, all sorts of different things. And as I say, he is an expert. I won't spoil it for now and tell you who it is, but first video should be next week. So yeah, hope you're looking forward to that. It should be good. So yeah, so you've done your safety checks, you've done your gas, you've tested your gas, you've disconnected your gas here, put a cap on it. Obviously we're not allowed to leave an open end on a gas pipe, so we'd cap that. We're then going to remove this boiler now. We've made all the electrics safe. Cut this out. And this flow pipe here, that would still be, well, not normally. Normally you're still going to have that sticking down under. What I would do, I would always put a stop end on there just in case somebody's piped it in a way that you don't expect. So I'd always put a stop end on there, or maybe even connect a push fit isolation valve or something like that, so that you can open it and see if see to make sure it is dead after you've installed your new boiler, because then you could then just cut this pipe up above ceiling. If you can get onto floorboards above, then you could cut pipe back, put a stop end on it, or there. It's always good practice to put stop ends on any pipes, just in case anybody comes along later on. I did go to a job many years ago, and it were an old servo warm system. And with an old servo warm system, they used to have a header tank up in the loft, but it didn't have a ball valve on it, and you had to fill it up with a hose pipe. And this boiler wasn't working, so the engineer that had been out to it, he'd put his hose pipe up into this tank in the loft, but what he wasn't aware of, the system had been changed, and the tank was still there, and this pipework was still there, but it went under floor, and it was no longer in use, but he filled that up, and where the pipe had just been cut and just left under floor, you know, like in the bedroom, for instance, under the floor. And as he filled that up with an hose pipe, you can imagine the floor below, there were a black sludge and it made a right mess. So as I say, it's always good practice to put stop ends on any pipes. You have to do that with gas, any unused gas pipes anyway, but it's still good practice to do that as well with water pipes. So these are the pipes we've got left now. So this one here would be from the pump, so we'd get rid of that one now. And as we can see, that would have been the A and B into the valve. This would have been the B into the hot water cylinder, and then this would have been the A for air, and this would go around the central heating. So now we just need to chop these out, bearing in mind this pipe here we need to reuse. So we can now just cut out the rest of these pipes. So that would have been the flow pipe that came from the boiler. Cut all this valve out, cut all this bit out. And as you're doing this, just make sure the most important pipes of all that you need to be aware of is the flow and the return. So the main flow and return. So you need to make sure if that's got a T in it. If you can go under the floor and see it's got a T in it, you can try and test that. If not, you might have to cut that pipe back on the return. You'd have to see. But hopefully now we'd have the flow coming up there. We'd have the return coming up here, and then you'd still have your hot tap here, and then you'd have your cold mains would normally come down in the airing cupboard. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to wipe this off, and then we're going to start with us boiler. We'll have a look at fluing options, gas options, and also we'll talk about the getting rid of condensate and the PRV as well. So this is an Ideal Logic boiler installation that John, Love Your Plumber, installed. I went and did a video with him. And this just gives you an example of the pipework. So as always, you would need to read the installation instructions, so you make sure that you're installing the boiler correctly. Also on this you can see it's got a filter on. It's also got a shock arrestor on this one. Now we'll have a look at which pipe goes where. Also we'll have a look at the fluing options as well. Also we can have a look at the gas and where the gas could be run. So I've just put this cold pipe back here now, just so we know which pipes are which. So we'd have off the top of the cylinder, we'd have the hot pipe there. So what we'd normally do, we'd normally cut these down in the old airing cupboard, maybe under the floor, so you can make your pipe work nice and neat. We've got our flow and returns. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to cut these back, cut them out of the way. I'm going to put the boiler on there, and then we're going to talk about the gas pipe, we're going to talk about the condensate pipe, and we'll talk about fluing options as well. One thing to point out, very, very important, always read the installation instructions for the boiler, especially if it's the first time you're installing a particular boiler, just to make sure that you're installing it correctly. Does it need flue? Does it need screws in flue? Doesn't it need screws in flue? Different boilers ask for different things. So as I say, it's always important to read the installation instructions. Because I've got these installation instructions handy, this is for the Ideal Vogue, and it's for a 32 kilowatt Ideal Vogue. We'll use these for this example, if you like. So if we have a look at, on the left, we'd have the flow. On most boilers, almost all boilers, Worcesters, Baxi, Ideal, they normally have standard DIN. So you'll have a flow, hot, gas, cold, return. That's what you'd have as standard. On return, we'd normally put a filter on there to stop any muck and sludge going back into your new boiler. Obviously you will have flushed the system out. If we have a look at the gas pipe is normally in the middle on these. And what we need to know about the gas pipe is the gas supply, it needs to be sized in accordance with British Standards BS 6891 2005. And that means that across the pipework, we're only allowed 1 millibar drop. So what that means is it's very important that we size the gas pipe correctly. So we're testing working pressure now, so not standing pressure. So sometimes people get confused with working pressure and standing pressure. So working pressure is when the appliance is in use. So that's the working pressure. So we've put his boiler on. The boiler's on high fire, and we test it at meter here. And as an example, let's say we're getting 20 millibar. 20 millibar at the meter. What that means is on this inlet pipe work here, we should be getting 19 or more, because that's the maximum. So across this pipe work here, we're allowed 1 millibar drop on working pressure. Now you need to read the installation instructions, because sometimes we're not testing it on pipe work, sometimes we're testing it inside the appliance. And when we're testing it inside the appliance or on the gas cock underneath the boiler, there's extra resistance. So sometimes the manufacturers will allow more of a drop. So for instance, on some boilers, they'll give you a chart and it might say 30 kilowatt boiler, you're allowed 1.5 in addition to the 1. So 1.5 will be across the components in the boiler, if you like. So what that would mean, say for instance this pipe here, now we're testing it to here, we're allowed an additional 1.5 because we're testing it from gas valve inside boiler. That would mean inside the boiler we'd be allowed 17.5. So we'd allow us first 1 millibar to the appliance, and then we'd be allowed an extra 1.5 across the appliance. So from the meter to the gas valve or whatever it is, it may be that you're allowed 2.5. I hope that makes sense. As I've said previously, I'm not a trainer. I'm just trying to help you guys hopefully raise the standards and understand things a little bit better, really. So that's the gas pipe. There is some really useful apps on gas pipe sizing. So if you're going to go do a boiler, do your gas pipe sizing, especially for the first few that you do. Definitely work it out so you know. We have done some videos as well on gas pipe sizing, so you could always watch them videos and see if they could help you with the gas pipe sizing as well. And always remember, if you're going to work on a boiler or any gas appliance, you must be gas safe registered or competent to do so. This video is aimed at trainees, people that they're going to be qualified, or they may have done a different job, they may have done meter installs or whatever, and it's just to give them a bit of guidance. But always read the installation instructions, always read the gas manuals, and never ever take any videos off the internet as fact, because things change over time. Next thing I want to look at is the condensate pipe, and this is something that's overlooked quite a lot. So the condensate pipe needs to be installed to the British standards BS 6798, and what that says, and when you look in the installation instructions, and these are old instructions. This is from I think it's about 5 or 6 year old boiler this now, but the insulation needs to be waterproof, and you need to check that insulation is waterproof. Now people will have seen me use this now, which is the Condensate Pro, and the reason I use this, I'll just show you this. This comes in kits, and it's pre-coated lagging, so it's waterproof out of the box. If you buy some other manufacturer's lagging or insulation, the stuff that we've been using for years that we all thought that we're allowed to use, it's not waterproof and it needs to be painted. You also need to paint it twice, and you need to paint it twice within 7 days of installing it. So when you're going to install new boilers, it's not a practical solution. So just check that your you're using the correct lagging. And as I say, always read the installation instructions, and if you don't know, if you read them and you don't really understand them, find out, ask, and just find out what the answer is. But that's the condensate. And this is just an example of how you would do a condensate pipe down into the drain with the waterproof lagging on it. And we had a question asked on the last video, so I put I said that we're going to do this video, and I asked for some questions, and that I'd add them in this video. And Ian asked about condensate pumps. Well, I very rarely use a condensate pump, and people will have different opinions of this, but in my opinion, the things that fail when you're doing a condensate and that are almost guaranteed to fail at some point are condensate pumps, and if you're connecting next to a sink, because it'll block up. And they're the faults that I go to: condensate pumps spilling over, etc., and waste pipes blocked. So I tend to always try and use your own condensate all the way to the drain outside. That's my personal choice. Please put a comment below and let me know what you think to that. But I did put a question onto Gas Chat, and you would have to check the installation instructions. But I asked what pumps people are using for the PRV and the condensate, and people have put that the Grundfos Conlift is suitable. As I say, you'd need to check with them. If I was going to install a condensate pump, I would check with the manufacturers at the time to make sure that it was suitable. So that's the answer. Hopefully that answers the question, Ian. But if you've got any more questions, as I say, put some comments below. And also you need to consider them freezing as well. So that's why we'd use the insulation, lagging, etc. So now we're going to look at installing the flue, and this is on lots and lots of Ideologics or ideal flues in general is where people tend to get it wrong. With the ideal flue, you're not supposed to have any white on show. So if we have a look in the installation instructions, it does show you, it's very clear. It tells you how to install the flue, and the rubber must cover the end of the flue. And I couldn't see in the installation instructions about how to seal the flue. So what I did, I phoned Ideal Boilers, and Ideal said that the flue needs to have sand and cement in the flue to seal it. So if we have a look on this job here, you can just pull the flue out. So it does need to have sand and cement according to Ideal. So that's a clear example. If in doubt, find out. Personally, I would always sand and cement the flue. That's just, I think it's common practice. Some manufacturers may say that you don't need to do that, but why not? You know, if in doubt, just sand and cement it. But that's a clear example of phone manufacturers. It's not in installation instructions, so phone manufacturers and ask them, and they'll give you an answer. And if need be, if it was something more important, then you might want to ask the manufacturers to send you it in writing. What we're going to do now, we'll just have a quick look. So that were a horizontal flue. So that's if us airing cupboard was on an outside wall and the flue was going to go straight outside, that would be the flue for that. If we're going to take it up through house into the loft, we're going to have a little quick look at that now. With the Ideals, you need an adapter that goes on top of boiler. And again, it's all in the installation instructions, how to do that. So you have your adapter, goes on top of boiler. And this is the important thing that you need to be aware of. Obviously, you need to read the installation instructions and make sure that you're correct. Things change over time, etc. But on every joint, what you're trying to do, you want to make sure that this flue is supported. So if you check it about, it's supported, it can't move, it can't fall off, it can't, the terminal can't blow out in wind, etc. And I seen one other day on somebody put a picture up of a job, and the job were really nice, the install was lovely, but the flue, as it came through the roof, it had two 45-degree bends on, and then it had a clip below the 245-degree bends, but none of that top bit had any clips on, so that could just fall off. That particular flue didn't need screws, so it could just fall off. So always make sure that you support the flue. More clips is better than less clips, and personally I would say that, and as I say, read the instructions, but at very maximum every metre or change of direction and change of direction. So if you're going to change direction, make sure you've got a clip on it, keep it all secure. Very important. And also, we used to use, many years ago when I first started out, we used to use lap band. So galv band, we used to wrap it round and we used to tie it up to rafters. Obviously, as time moves on, we're no longer allowed to do that. So again, don't use lap band. Make sure you use the correct clips for that, for fluing. So clearly we used to use lap band, and that is now seen as being incorrect. So somebody who's always used lap band for years that and come up with times. So we used to use this stuff. So things change, and this is why any of these, never believe that somebody is better than you, because everybody is always learning. I'm learning every day. Even me doing these videos, I learn from doing the videos, because people add comments below and say, well, if you'd have done this, this could be better. So we're always learning. So even if you're at the start of the journey now of learning, when you get to my sort of age, you'll still be learning. So every day is a school day, and every day you'll be learning, but just find the answers so you know that you're installing things correctly. So this is just an example now of the flue going up through the roof here. So you'd have your flue here, you'd have your adapter here, so you can test it. And then what we need to do, so we've done the flue now, we need to have a little think about commissioning the boiler, also what controls we're going to use. So now we need to use Boiler Plus compatible controls. And again, one of the lads in the training group the other day, he was working with a plumber, and they'd replaced the boiler, and he was putting some pictures on, and they hadn't quite finished it yet, and they were asking if we could give them some feedback, and they still had the old control on there. It was an old Honeywell control, and it wasn't compatible. And so we just pointed that out to him, and they're going to change that anyway, but we pointed that out, and so now he knows that he needs to use Boiler Plus control. So as I say, every day is a school day, people are learning. Sometimes things change and regulations change, and how do you know? So it's hard sometimes to keep up with the changing, things that change. Anyway, I'm babbling on about that. But so smart controls, we need to start using controls now that are Boiler Plus compatible. They need to be a smart control. Also, these are the options now where you can have internet controls as well. I normally use the EPH controls, the Combi Pack 4, but they have got they've got a smart one now as well. I've not actually installed one of these yet. I might do a video on installing that. And now I want to talk a little bit about commissioning. We're going to do a video on commissioning. Actually, I think it's the next video that we're going to do. So we're going to do, I've got a trainer coming to do some videos with me, and we've done a few videos already which we haven't turned on yet, but they're coming soon. And we've got, on them videos, we've got how to set the gas valve, we've got how to use the multimeter and other equipment correctly, also how to test gas valves and all sorts of different things. We've also got how to use your flue gas analyzer for commissioning, so how to test the flow and return temperatures, how to test the hot water coming out the tap and how to set that correctly. And when you're commissioning the boiler, Also, it's going to depend on the installation instructions. Normally you would have a 35-degree rise. So if you've got 10 degrees coming in, you'd be expecting to get 45 degrees. So we've got about, on the hot, so this is the hot tap now. We've got about 11 litres a minute. It's about 11 litres a minute. So we would expect that temperature to be minimum 50 degrees really. It may be that it's a little bit more than that as well. So we'll just have a quick look at that. So yeah, it's about 50 degrees, just short of 50 degrees. That's
it's full creeping up, it'll get to 50 and all that.
So you can see it's 50 degrees. So that will depend on the boiler, the manufacturers, the output of the boiler, etc. But what we're testing the temperature rise, and if it's working as per the installation instructions. So quite a few of the times when customers phone you with problems and they say they've got no hot water, it could be you go out to it and the boiler's working perfectly fine, but it may be that they've installed a 24 kilowatt boiler and it's the middle of winter, so the temperature of the water coming in is cooler, and then it's giving the temperature rise. Or another thing as well, it could be that they've got, the boiler might want to achieve between maybe 9 litres a minute at a 35 degree rise, but it could be that the property's got 15 litres a minute on the cold, which would mean that the hot water, you'd have to turn the hot water really down back to the 9 litres a minute to achieve that 35 degree rise. So I hope that makes sense. So sometimes you need to install a larger boiler. Personally, I don't usually install 24 kilowatt boilers. I'd normally install a 28 or a 30 depending on the brand. But yeah, I hope you found this video of some use. If you've got any questions, please ask them in the comments below. As I say, we have got some more videos like this coming soon. The smaller snippets, so that you don't have to watch these big long videos. Please put some comments below. A lot of time and effort goes into these videos, so I really appreciate if you could put a thumbs up on there. That'd be great. Thanks for watching. My name's Alan Hart, and today I'm going to